Evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight for Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare. My name is Evelina Kozog. I'm part of the practice support team. My colleague Giuliani Cardoso is here with me as well from the same team. We have Beta Harvey from CPD team. Also today joining us, Dr. Brendan Goodger. He's our General Manager for Primary Care Improvement. I also have two people from Avant. One is Julie Coab and one is our speaker Gail Wang, which I will introduce in a moment to you. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians and sovereign people of the land across which we work. I recognize their continuing connection to land, water, and community, and pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I'd also extend this respect to any of Aboriginal colleagues who may be joining us tonight. Here you can see upcoming events. We still have quite a lot of events till the end of the year. And also I would like to pay your attention to some events which are not run by CESPEN, but we're promoting My Medicare events for the GPs and practice team, which are happening this week. And they are connected to general practice in aged care incentive. Now, I would like to introduce our presenter for this evening. Gail Wang is a risk advisor for Avant. She started her career as a registered nurse specializing in emergency nursing. She moved her career to health and business management in a variety of disciplines, including managing day hospitals in gastroenterology and oncology and setting up practices, working for IVF, health screening, oncology, and allied health. Gail has experience in various accreditations, including RACGP, New South Wales Health, and NATA. Just before I let Gail speak, we have a question for all of you. We will do a quick poll and ask you a question. And the question is, are you currently using AI in your practice? So we have about 25% for yes, 75% for no. Is it what you were expecting, Gail?
No, but good to know. Hopefully some minds will be changed by the end of tonight.
Thank you very much. I let you present now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good evening and welcome everybody. Tonight's AI in healthcare is, we're going to start by looking at what is AI. We're also going to go into the history of our AI. I think it's really interesting to understand where our AI came from the beginnings of it right through to where it is today, and the uses that we are looking at currently. And today, what we've got to govern it, the risks that are in various types of AI. With that, we're mainly going to be looking at the scribes and how do we manage those risks. And we are starting to get some help from governments and how we do manage those risks, which we'll go into later on tonight. First thing we need to do, though, is we need to define what is AI. Lots and lots and lots of definitions. If you plug it into Google, you will get a load of definitions. This one, though, is what our federal government are looking at, and through the Department of Industry and Resources and other federal governments when they are defining AI and how they're going to govern it and manage it and give us help as to how we should be using AI and how we should be managing our risks in AI. We all know it's a machine-based system. There's machine learning, there's generative AI models, there's all different kinds of models coming out as we go into AI further and further. What I'd like to do, though, is we're going to go into the history of AI. What I'd like you to put into the chat is, hopefully everyone can see the chat. What year or what decade did you think AI first became a thing? So just think about it. So when was AI first
chat button is also on the bottom of your screen. We have the first answer, 1960s.
Anyone else got any other answers when they think the first AI? All you get is bragging rights. You don't get anything else.
1960s, 1970s, 1950s.
Chess machine, okay.
Oh, you can see it, good.
Yeah, yep, 1960s. Okay, is anyone else? 1980s. Okay, there's a few people that are actually on the ball there. None of you know yet who it was. Okay, nice work. There's actually more right answers there than I expected. So let's go back in time. 1950 was the first time that AI called synthetic intelligence started as a conversation piece. Alan Turing from the Imitation Game, he started AI thoughts as he wanted to determine if a machine can exhibit intelligent behavior. So you could just imagine Alan Turing, he's a brilliant mathematician. He was so into computers and what can we get machines to do for us. So he has this test called the Turing test, which is still used today. And it's used in chatbots to see whether chatbots are effective or not. So if you want to look up a bit more about that, please Google it and have a look at all that. The other thing in the 1956, for what started back in 1956 is the Dartmouth Conference. Has anyone heard of that one? You can thumbs up, thumbs down. It was the first synthetic intelligence conference that happened in the world. Is in the USA. So that was really, really interesting. So the Dartmouth Conference aim was to explore the potential of synthetic intelligence. From there, we got the 1958s. We had this other platform called Perception, and the US Defense got involved in it, and they really wanted to put some money into it and to see how they could use it for their defense force. Then we get to the 1960s, and we have the first chatbot called Eliza in 1966, and then further chatbots after that. In 1970s, there's a little bit happening, but not too much. Then the 1980s, it stalled. It's called the AI winter. Now, that's a really good term to know that if you go to a trivia night, they might say, when did the AI of winter happen? It was in the 1980s. So that happened in the 1980s, stalled. But then what happened after that? 1980, first interactive game. Any ideas what the first interactive game was in AI? You can pop that in a little chat. And again, you get bragging rights if you get it right. What do you think the first game was? Anyone else got any other ideas? We all agree? It was chess. It was absolutely chess. Really interesting, isn't it? That was the first interactive AI game. So then we come to the 2000s. And we've got an exponential growth. We all remember the 2000s is when home computers came in, a lot of funding going into the internet, a lot of funding going into apps, a lot of funding and a lot of things happening. Governments, private businesses started putting money into it. There's better programs, it's more flexible. The large language models came out. And as we know, we're at ChatGPT, we're at where we are today in healthcare, which is just phenomenal where it's going. We've got all different kinds of AI in our world. So we know we've got in AI, we have generative AI, we have machine learning AI, and we have natural language processing. So if we look at generative AI, we look at what that has got. So this is quite a busy slide here, but we've got the large language models. You've probably all heard of that. That's just how it learns the data we put into it. Then we've got the multimodal foundation models. We've got machine learning where we have the deep learning, and the deep learning really comes into the effect in healthcare in other areas besides the scribes. So we'll talk about a couple of those a little bit later on, how that's really helped develop the way we are starting to deliver healthcare, but the way that healthcare is going in the future. There's supervised learning, unsupervised learning, the natural language processing that happened there as well. The German, So there's a German journalist who made a shocking discovery earlier this year when he typed into Microsoft's AI Copilot, "Oh, I read there was a 50-year-old child molester," he tells the ABC radio, but it wasn't. So what he'd done was, what AI had done, someone had put into ChatGPT and said, "Hey, can you tell me anything about this person?" This person had actually written about these people. And he was then, ChatGPT came out with the information to say that he'd actually done these things and he was a violent criminal. So these are things that he wrote about. This is one of the things we really need to be careful about, what goes into the AI, especially the generative AI, and what it's coming out of. It's only as good as the data going in and making sure it's clean data coming out. Computer vision AI, we're looking at further on down the track, where we're looking at how it can start thinking for itself, thinking better and analysing images like we can. Again, we're not quite there yet, but it's certainly moving along in a hurry. So general use of AI today, how does it affect us? What do we do? Where do we use it in our life? It's everywhere now, isn't it? It's in voice assistants. So we've got Siri, Alexa. Who has it in their house? A lot of people have that in their house now. Alexa, turn the lights on. We've got take recommendations on movies, on the driving routes, Waze, Google Maps, hotels, so much more. There was a, I don't know if any of you know, there was a case study, the case study on Trivago that happened in 2020, where they were taken to court because they were saying that they would find the cheapest quickly. They would very quickly find the cheapest hotel for you. But what they're actually doing is their algorithm was telling you the hotels where they made the biggest profit. So they were fined according to that. So again, be careful, be wary about some of these algorithms and these AI that we're using, because they're setting it up for themselves and for their success. So just to know that that's actually happening, and that's already happened. Helps manufacturers make better and new products, and in manufacturing, it's just really, really good. It can also predict and prevent spread of bushfires. I don't know about you, but they can't get the weather right, so I don't know how they're going to get the bushfires right, but they're using it. They used it in Victoria already, so let's just hope that they'll be able to get all this AI talking really, really well and helping our community and helping us prevent the disasters. So we're going to look at currently what's happening in AI in the medical profession. So we know that it's being well used in some areas, really, really well used. It's being used in radiology. It's being used in research, and research is a really, really big part of AI in healthcare today. There's increased usage of AI by scribes and doctors, except for the people here, because only 25% of you are using AI. However, it is becoming, 2 years ago, we're looking at no one was using it. So if we've already got 25% to 30% of people using it, that's actually quite a big uptake, considering the risks and the privacy concerns within AI using it in healthcare, because you are looking at sensitive and personal information. So I think it's actually quite a fast uptake in healthcare. So let's look at some top uses in healthcare. So we're looking at system efficiencies. I don't know if any of you subscribe to a lot of the government portals that have reports that come out in AI in healthcare. One of the systems efficiencies that is currently being flagged as the biggest saver of employment hours is systems efficiencies in hospitals to do with waiting lists, triage, and appointment scheduling. So currently, Ottawa Emergency Department is using an algorithm which, when people come into the department, their information's put in, and then the algorithm decides which tests and x-rays are most relevant for the new patient data on the set of for the data set of the treatment provided. for the patients with similar symptoms who were admitted previously for that. So really, really interesting and fascinating that that's how they're already starting to use that. So they are using that and it's successful and they're continuing to use it. The other way that AI is being used in hospitals, in some hospitals, and I think South Australia are using these quite effectively and looking at and doing some trials in it, is predicting the length of stay of patients. And looking at unplanned readmissions, putting all the information in, and therefore they're looking at the staffing requirements. So this is helping people who are running businesses to work out what they need for employment, how many hours they need on this ward, on that ward, when they're expecting patients to go home, depending on the algorithm of all the information that's fed into the system. So it is being used quite a bit. We're also looking at medical documentation, as in scribes, which is the Heidi, the LIBOR, the iScribe, and the other. Last count was 36 of them. So there's probably, I haven't counted recently, but it's probably well over 40. I know a lot of doctors have said that they're doing their own, and we get contacted frequently saying we're writing our own AI scribe. Can you help us? So no, we can't. You have to get some legal help on that one. Diagnostics. Now, this is the interesting part of AI in healthcare today. So AI has been used in diagnostics for a while. It's generally been predictive. That means that it's not going to actually diagnose, and that's going to be the definitive result of that AI thought pattern. It's going to be, it still requires a human eye to cast over it. There's been a lot of talk in international circles and within Australia as to how much we're going to let AI go in this area. And that's the really interesting talk, because they don't want doctors to lose their skills, and do how much are we going to trust AI to get it right, and who's going to be at fault, which we'll go into a bit later. It's really interesting to see where it's going. So we're looking at radiology. Currently, radiology, there is the ability for it to review the scans, interpret, and do the report writing. So we know that in breast screening, we've already seen AI. It actually has a better rate of detection than the humans. Not much, but it is a better rate of detection. So that's already happening behind the scenes with some trials, and seeing how that goes. So then we've also got in IV embryo selection, there's a new study out to say that AI is actually 10 times faster in selecting the right embryos for implantation. It's got the same effectiveness, but it's just 10 times faster in selecting it. So where's that going to go? Who knows? But it's just another really interesting way that it's being used. Dermatology screening. I don't know if any of you are using any kind of AI in looking at skin lesions, but there is one machine called the Vectra. Don't know if you've heard of that. That's the 3D machine that does mapping and diagnosis, all with AI, with all the data that's been fed into it. It is in several public hospitals in Australia. They're in trial doing stage 4 melanoma. They've got to be stage 4 melanoma to be able to get into that. But they're not looking at as a national screening. Initially, we wanted it to be a national screening tool, but apparently that's not what the government are looking at this point in time. There are obviously issues with a 3D mapper. There's areas of the body that are covered that it doesn't actually get to, that still need to be manually checked. Pathology. It's been used in pathology for histopathology. It looks at different cells and differentiates them. So some of these are really unusual cells that pathologists are using AI to help understand what this cell could be. And then they will go and check it as well. But it will give them the right path to follow and the right things to start looking at as they're trying to diagnose and find out what this cell is that they're looking at. Other interesting things is diabetic retinopathy and glaucoma screening that started in 2018. They're looking at that being really helpful in developing countries and lower income socioeconomic areas. Another one that came out only recently in the last couple of weeks was AI-driven MRI analysis offers insights into prostate cancer and the metastatic risks. So how cool is that for you blokes? But also for anyone working in having patients with prostate cancer, that these AI-driven MRIs are now going to accurately predict the metastatic risk and the treatment outcomes, and that will improve our patient care and our patient survival rate. So that's just a really interesting way that AI is starting to be used for our patients and to give better outcomes for them. It's all been tested and it's all gone through and make sure that we know, and the doctors know, and the authorities know that this is actually accurate and it's working well. But as everything at the moment, everything still has a human eye casting over it. Like I said before, in the big risk here in the diagnostics and the looking at the way it's being used is de-skilling of our surgeons and de-skilling of our doctors, not being able to notice and look at things under the microscope or being able to perform that surgery because AI is helping them do it so much better. So, and if that machine is not there and the AI is not available, what are they going to do, especially in rural areas? So that is why the communities, the health communities around the world are saying that doctors will not be put out of work because we still need them to be able to do the work. Then we're looking at drug discoveries. So 2 weeks ago, a paper came out on the protein chain and folding of the protein chain. Now, bear with me, we'll get there. I'm going to land the plane shortly. So when we've got, for 50 years, biologists have been trying to fold the protein chain. Why is this important? Those of you who are doctors here, you'll probably know where I'm heading with this. I mentioned it to one of our doctors at work and at Avant, and they went, oh, yes, 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 and they got really excited about it. So what happened in 2018, they used deep AI. Remember earlier we talked about different kinds of AIs, generative AI, the large language models, machine learning, and one of them had the deep AI in it. So the deep AI managed to fold the chain of protein, which they had not been able to do for 50 years. So just think about that. 50 years, man couldn't do it. All the biologists around the world trying to do this, but they did it. Why? What's the point? What does it do for us now? So what it does is that it's allowed modification of drugs. So you've probably heard in the news and around and in articles to say that they can now target to chemotherapy to patients with cancer. This is all about the protein folding. If they couldn't learn how to fold the protein, they wouldn't be able to target and do a genomic sequence and target to each individual patient what the right amount of chemotherapy, the right drugs to give the best outcome for the patients. So that's where that was really, really important. Without deep AI, that would never have been discovered, the folding of the protein, and now they would not be able to start looking at and researching how to deliver specific chemotherapy and targeted drug therapy to patients with cancer. Really, really interesting. I think that's a really good way to go. There's also some things when we're looking at how do we generate our knowledge, preventative medicine. We're talking about screening for Alzheimer's. Big. I don't know about any of you, but when you've seen your parents go through Alzheimer's, you're going, I don't want to go there, trying to figure out ways not to go there. So very hard to screen and dissect someone's brain while they're alive. So what they've been doing is those who are donated with Alzheimer's, their bodies to research, they've been looking at the myelin sheath, I think that's doctors, that's correct, in the brain, and they've been dissecting it very, very small to see what's going on. And they've noticed changes in the brain that have previously been undetectable by human eye in MRI scans. What they're now finding out is that this is actually detectable. These changes in the brain are now detectable because they know what they are. They fed it into AI, into the algorithm, And they're now noticing that patients with Alzheimer's, they can actually start picking it up. So now they're starting to look at, can we detect it earlier before the onset of Alzheimer's and see where the changes are going to happen. So all that research is being done, all that preventative, hopefully preventative medicine, so we don't get Alzheimer's and we don't go into their, we don't have that issue that the data is telling us that we're going to have a quite a large issue in the next few years. Another really, really interesting way it's being used is in mental health. So now this comes with a whole lot of privacy concerns, and it's not being used in Australia, but this is where there's some trials that into an algorithm, doctors are putting in the recording of the consultations, patients' social media paths, their past ones, and then what these people are allowing the doctors to do during this research phase is they're monitoring their social posts. I know. So they're looking to see whether there's any changes in their social posts, what they're posting, how they're posting, and to see whether that's going to, if there's any increased risk there of deterioration of the mental health. So it's really interesting. They're starting to use that now in mental health as well. So as you can see, this is just a snapshot of where we're going with AI in healthcare. However, for you guys, where you're working, it's probably not going to be using any of that. So let's talk about AI scribes. So AI scribes in healthcare is where most of you think when you're talking about AI in healthcare, not all these other beautiful, wonderful ways that they're working out how to use it and how to benefit our patients and how to provide better care and better outcomes. We're looking at AI scribes. So why do we want to use it? Now, I know that some of you think, and if you're not using it, you may be thinking, we don't know what the risks are. We don't know whether it's going to benefit us. We don't know why we should be using it. And that's all very, very valid points. What our doctors that do use it have told us is that there's improved patient communication, because instead of sitting there and typing away at their computer as the patient's talking or writing away, whichever way they do it, they're actually able to engage with the patient and look them in the eye and have the conversation, pick up the little bits of body language that they normally would have missed because they're sitting at the computer. So our doctors who are using it, the feedback is that they find that that really does improve their communication. And they understand their patients better because of that reasoning. They get more detailed information. So why is that? Because it records the whole conversation with the patient. It records, is to say you've got 2 or 3 people in there. You can actually say there's different people in there, and the AI will pick out that there's 3 people in there and the mother of the child said this. So it won't detail the mother's name or anything. It just says the mother. So we're looking at more detailed patient records. So for doctors who aren't fast typists or aren't good at doing detailed contemporaneous notes, they may find that AI is going to be really, really good for them. And because you're contemporaneous, you've got all the notes there, you might be able to find that your decision making, your clinical reasoning will be better because you're not actually missing anything. You've got everything there in front of you to be able to make that decision. Now, transcription errors, we say that there's reduced risk of transcription errors because it's all happening there. The transcription is what's actually being said in the most part. That's why we'll go into later the ways that we look at the risk. We have to check that. So you're not actually going to miss any of the words that are said, but there are things that you will miss using AI. So what are the risks in using this? We've got privacy errors and inaccuracies leading to patient harm, bias, operation, surveillance devices. We'll go into all these. So we need to look at all these issues on their own. When we look at errors and inaccuracies, we know that we've trialed it and we've had someone say, do you have any allergies? And they said, oh no, but I have a reaction to morphine. I get a rash. And that didn't pick it up as an allergy, and it said nil known. So it's not 100% accurate. So you still really need to check it and make sure that you understand what's going on with it. Privacy. Is privacy a big concern? Is privacy one of the reasons why people are not wanting to use AI? Anyone want to pop that in the chat? Is that one of the reasons? Don't know what to do about the privacy issues? Okay, so let's go into that. So what are the privacy issues? Privacy issues is the same. It's the Privacy Act still govern, the APP still govern this. So you are dealing with sensitive and personal information, and that's just what it is. So you need to make sure that you're keeping that private and secure, as you would with any other information in any other app or any other software that you're using. So that's just the way that we need to look at that. So let's look at privacy in a bit more detail. So we need to look at where it stores its data. Is it storing data? Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them keeping the data and using it for their large language models to help it to learn. Are some of them learning within the app? So all these questions, you just need to find out what they're doing. Is the information going offshore? Is any information going offshore, or is it all in Australia? We're looking pretty good these days. Most of the softwares that are used in Australia, they all have, most of them, in all different areas of healthcare. A lot of them do have cloud storage in Australia, but are they storing it in the cloud? Are they storing it de-identified? What are they doing? So the privacy legislation still governs us. I'll go into later on about your policy and what you need to do with your policy, because we've got some really clear guidance now from the government on what to do with that. So we need to look at that. So then we're looking at, we need to know that it's compliant with Australian privacy law. So most of them do say, all the big ones will say somewhere in there what their privacy is. Now, you've all got privacy policies at your practices, and they have a privacy policy as well, and what they do with it. I find it interesting reading. Probably a lot of you wouldn't, but I find it very interesting in the reading. So other things about the data, we've gone through a lot of that. How long do they keep it for? I know some of them, some of you who are using some of the big names in scribing tools, some of them you choose how long to keep it for and when you're going to delete it. There's been some discussion in the office about whether or not you even need to keep the transcript. Our doctor in our team who uses an AI tool, what she does is she edits the transcript in the AI tool and then brings that over, and nothing is kept. Other doctors like to keep the transcript. There's risks, really big risks involved in that, because they are able to subpoena that, and it's not an accurate record. As we know, AI is not accurate until we know it's been checked, edited, and then finalized and approved. So if we go down to the OAIC, we know that it's got guidance on privacy, which I'm going to go into a little bit later, because there's some really good things that have come out about that. Consent. Is consent something that's bothering you? How do we gain consent? Do we need to gain consent? Why do we need to gain consent? After all, we're just doing the medical records, aren't we? We're just writing notes for the consultation at this point in time. So what do we need to have consent? Yes, we do. So at this point in time, there is some legislation on the floor of Parliament, which we'll go into again a bit later. So at this point in time, where we are sitting is we're saying, yes, we need to get consent from the privacy perspective and transparency. So we want to let our patients know that we're using it, we're using AI, but we're also being transparent just to say, hey, we're using it for this reason. We're using it to make sure that we are getting better medical records, be able to give you better outcomes, And if anyone else needs to read it, it's all really there. We know that consent is a really big part of it still at the moment. How do we do that? So at the moment, what we're saying, what the recommendation by the RACGP and by the government bodies and by us is that you can put it in your patient registration form, assigned to say a bit in there to say, hey, we do utilise AI in this practice, and by signing this to say that you consent to the use of AI. So we're doing it for privacy perspective. The other one we're doing it for is because of in different states and territories, but in New South Wales, because we're in New South Wales, is to do with the Surveillances Act. Now, the Surveillances Act, really interesting, says that if in New South Wales, that if you've got anyone listening, you need to get consent. Not every state has this. Queensland doesn't. New South Wales does. So we need to get consent, but it doesn't say written consent. It doesn't give any indication of what kind of consent, whether it can be verbal. So from a privacy perspective, from a Surveillances Act perspective and a transparency perspective, we're saying to get consent, starting with the patient registration form, to say, hey, we do use AI, putting it in your privacy policy. Hey, we use AI in this practice. And the other one is at the moment, and some of you who are using AI scribes, you gain consent, verbal consent at the beginning, and you just tick the box and off it goes and starts recording. So there's 3 ways that we are recommending to do it. One in your patient registration form, one in your privacy policy, and the other one the verbal consent when they come in. So we're not saying that you need to get them to physically sign like you do for a procedure, a physical consent bit of paper, and sign it every time. It's just we don't need to go to that length. At the beginning, 6 months ago, that was probably the advice. But as times are changing and as the governments are putting out some more information for us, this is what the advice is and how to do it. Now, another issue with AI we touched on a bit earlier is the accuracy. So accuracy, like I was saying before, it doesn't pick up everything. It doesn't pick up nuances of the patient. It doesn't pick up body language. It doesn't pick up the fact that the patient felt uncomfortable during that palpation. It doesn't pick up a whole lot of stuff. It won't pick up the blood pressure or the heart rate unless you say it out loud. So we need to make sure that those things are added into it. Some of our doctors will do little side notes just to make sure they add them in there. But it does record a whole conversation. Like I said, even if there's 2 people in there, 3 people in there, it will still record that number of people in there. The other things AIs, some of the bigger AIs do, and you'd have to check on the one that you're using, if this is something that you need, is that if everyone's speaking a different language other than English, then it can deal with that as well, so long as everyone's speaking the same language, not if the doctor's speaking one language and the patients are speaking another. So just think about that it can be used for that as well. So we're also saying for medical records, these are really, really helpful. Our doctors who've started using it just go, I'll never go back to the way that we were doing it before. So even though the notes appear to be accurate, don't count on it as being the final accuracy and the final accurate notes, contemporaneous, detailed, accurate notes. You'll need to do some kind of editing and approving before it finally gets in its final format in the medical notes. It becomes the notes for that consultation. We do not think that it's going to be a defence to say, in due course, to say that, oh, the AI scribe did that, not me, because it doesn't matter who's done it. You as the person utilising the scribe, the practitioner, you need to check the notes. You're going to hear Avant saying this all the time. It's so important because we've seen a lot of errors come up in some of this AI, mishearing, misinterpreting. And as AI's learning from you, the more you use it, the more it will learn, and it may start putting things in there that actually didn't happen in the consultation as well. So what do we need to do? We just need to make sure that you make sure that the notes, the final notes are contemporaneous, they're accurate, and they're detailed. And they've got the SOPIF acronym. If you don't know what that is, more than happy to talk to you about that later. But that's just what we need to make sure we've got at the end. Who's responsible if something goes wrong? AI scribing tools, they're not regulated by the TGA. The TGA have got a paper and consultation paper out that's now closed on AI and AI scribing tools. So do we expect it? We don't know what they're going to decide, but it is not a medical device. It's just supporting the clinical decision making and the diagnosis and the treatment. So if the doctor, the practitioner, doesn't check the records and check for the errors and make sure you put in the extra bits that this tool did not pick up, you're going to be accountable for that. So it's like writing your notes, doesn't matter. This is just going to be a time saver, hopefully, for you. But the accountability will then be for accuracy of the notes, will be on the practitioner using those AI scribe tools. So practice managers out there, you're going to be asked to do this. You're going to be asked to do the due diligence, no matter what AI you're going to be using in your practice. You need to know that it's fit for purpose. What do we mean by fit for purpose? Why do you want it? You don't know if it's going to be fit for purpose till you know what the reasoning is behind needing or thinking about getting it. So are you looking at get more accurate records because I'm really, really slow at typing and it takes me a week to finish my records and then I kind of forget what I said? Are we looking to make a time saver for ourselves? Am I staying back 2 or 3 or 4 hours trying to finish the notes on that day to make them contemporaneous, but still, can I remember exactly what happened in all those consultations? Don't know. So there's lots of different reasons. So you need to know if it's fit for purpose. You need to make sure that it's a medical grade. What do we mean by that? So then we talk about the chat GPTs, the open generative AI tools. So those are on the open internet. They're available for anyone and everyone to see. So we're talking about AI scribing tools made specifically for healthcare because we know that the privacy concerns and for the sensitive and personal information are better. We know that you can adapt it to fit your consultation and it's fit for purpose in Australia for healthcare settings. So there's a whole lot around the due diligence. So you just need to make sure that it's fit for purpose. One thing I would suggest to you, and we go back to why you want it, is how do you know if it's working? How do you know it's working for you in your practice? So what you would say is possibly, I want to have more accurate records. This Dr. A wants to have more accurate records. So let's do a quick audit of his records before he starts using AI. And let's do a quick audit of his records after doing AI and seeing if there's an improvement. Hopefully there is. If it's a time saver, let's go, okay, I spend 2 hours every night after consults and I stay back and do my notes. Let's start using AI, make them contemporaneous, doing it at the end of every consult, whacking it in. Am I running behind time more than I normally would? Or if you didn't, great job. And am I staying back as late? So think about the reasons for it and make sure that it's actually working and delivering on those reasons for that. So now we get into prepare for the unexpected. So we know that AI tools, what you need to understand an AI tool is how quickly, if you think that there's an issue with it, a privacy issue or a cyber breach, how do you switch it off? How do you disengage? How do you break the chains with that so you can keep going on in a safe manner? Who's going to be liable if they have a breach? Well, they will be, but what you need to make sure is that you're prepared for the unexpected and how you're going to deal with these issues when they happen. So I'm pretty sure, I'm hopefully that all of you have a cyber framework. This is going to help you with your privacy and your concerns in your practice. We're just going to go through this briefly because the cyber is a massive talk just on its own. So everyone has to have a cyber framework. It's part of the law that every business, and not just healthcare, but every business must have a cyber framework in Australia. If you don't know, cyber.gov has the Essential 8, and I would encourage you, if you don't know what that is or never heard of it, to look it up. And if you do know what it is, to refresh yourself on it. So just quite briefly, we're just going to go through some of the things that the cyber framework is asking you to do to make sure that your systems are safe to support all these different software systems that you're using to run and manage your practice. So we're looking at, there's multiple layers. They call it the Swiss cheese. The more layers, the harder it is for someone to get in, a threat actor to get into and compromise your systems. So we're looking at passphrases that are changed regularly. We're looking at multi-factor authentication, VPNs if you're accessing offsite. We're looking at how often your patching is done. Is it done straight away? Do you receive reports on your patching? We're looking at restricting privileges, and that meaning which staff can access these software systems, but also into what depth. Are they read-only, or can they edit? Can they change? I can tell you some stories about that another time, and how you would need to do that for your safety. And then we're looking at blocking pop-ups, high-risk websites like Facebook, and making sure we do regular backups. So practice managers and practice owners, what we advise you to do is to make sure you've got an expert in who's IT health expert to set up your systems and manage your systems and give you monthly, quarterly reports on the amount of times it's been intruded, the amount of patches that have been done, make sure the framework's done, make sure the backups are done, they're tested and they're working. Making sure that you have a cyber policy. There are some assistance on cyber.gov on what you need to have in your cyber policy. So you can always look that up. Who is responsible for your cyber safety? Generally, the practice manager wears all the hats and they're constantly pulling them on and off, all the different ones that they have. What training do you do for your staff? And this also includes in your privacy. They all go hand in hand, and annual training at a minimum. Should always be a regular agenda item, and to always have these things on your risk register. Really, really important. One thing I want to go into about AI in the healthcare setting is that when you're doing your transcription, we do advise you not to put personal information into the transcript. So you are able to, we know some doctors who say, Mrs. Smith came in today, Mrs. Alberta Smith came in today and she's complained of, and goes through the whole thing and does the whole consultation and may say a few other bits and pieces, her date of birth is. But we say keep those out of it, because that in turn leads to the possibility of a threat actor coming in and grabbing that information. If you've got it using an AI tool that keeps the information and may keep a transcript of some description, even though de-identified, how do you know that they're actually going to remove those identifiable features out of there? So the recommendation is not to use any identifiable features in the transcript, because most of them you'll be able to put it outside the transcript and stick it in the notes. So AI assists doctors, doesn't it? Most doctors, not all of them. I know some doctors have used it and said, no, it's not good for me. I'm actually a really fast typist. I can touch type and I can get this done really, really well and really fast. So for them, it's not working. So they've done, what do I need out of it? Did it work? No, it didn't. So I'm going to go back to the old way. It's not there yet for some people, but for other people, it's there and they're using it and very, very effectively. As I said before, check the output. So you've got to keep checking to see, making sure that it's contemporaneous and that it's working. Okay, so I'm going to go through the framework in Australia. Now, this has changed last week and it also changed 2 weeks ago. So some of this, hopefully will be new to a lot of you because a lot of the people that, you know, because something's changing all the time in Australia with the framework of AI. Now, the OAIC has recently, 2 weeks ago, put out guidance on privacy and the use of commercially available AI products, meaning your AI scribes. So this is only 2 weeks ago. So the key takeaways in this is that it's talking about privacy. So it's talking about human oversight must be embedded into the process. Who has access to the information that's generated by the entity. So this is what now the OAIC guidance on AI scribes is about. Now the next one is updating your privacy policies. So some of you are thinking, what policy do I need to have if we're going to use AI? I don't want another policy. We don't want you to have another policy, and neither does the OAIC. Good news. So what you need to do is you just need to update privacy policy. You need to update it just to be transparent with your patients, to say that you're using AI. And the AI, it's all the public-facing tools. So are you using chatbots? Some of our practices are using chatbots to interface when patients want to call in for a through their telephone system, and the chatbot answers it, and then it triages them to the most appropriate person in the team. So they need to put those things. We're using AI scribes and we're using chatbots. So those need to be put into your privacy policy. You don't need a whole policy. Just put it into your privacy policy. So that's the really good thing. It's not a big change. So the AI systems are used to generate or infer personal information, and that includes images. It's a collection of personal information and must comply with the APP3, which is a collection of solicited personal information, to be really particular. So again, it's just saying that you need to make sure that your privacy, when your privacy policy for your patients and the patient registration form says, what are we collecting it for? We're using AI. This is how we're going to be using it. And this is what we're going to do with it. And this is the reason that we're doing it, to provide a better service for you. It's got to come down to better patient care in the end. The next, one of the other key takeaways, so if personal information is being put into the AI system, then APP6 needs to be adhered to. So that's just one of the reasons why we were saying before not to put personal information into the AI scribe. So if you do, then you need to look at APP6. So it's much easier, and our doctors that are using it have said, we don't put our personal information in anymore. We just do it outside of it, and we do it contemporaneously and put it into the patient notes. So that's something for you to think about, is to how far down this slope do you want to go? If you don't want to have to go into that, then you don't need to worry about the APP6. So an example of that would be to say, hey, Mr. Albert Einstein, how are you feeling today? What brought you here? So now you've put in something identifiable in there. So that's what we're saying. Don't put the identifiable features in there. Just go, hi, how are you feeling today? So that's where we're looking at that, like that regulatory framework with the OAIC. The next one is the current status. We're looking at currently on the floor of Parliament is some privacy legislation. This is the first tranche. It was meant to be passed by September, but it's government. So we're hoping maybe by next March, April. And one of the things it does talk about is the use of AI. And we're talking about responsible AI in healthcare. So it may or may not be talking about it. It's talking about AI in a form, but may not relate to scribes. We just have to wait and see how that plays out. There's a whole lot of other things in the privacy legislation, but not related to tonight. The recent government consultations that have now finished is the safe and responsible artificial intelligence in healthcare by the Department of Health. The cyber security legislative package, which is also now just being closed. This is all like in the last couple of weeks. It's changing all the time. So what we're telling you tonight may not be current in a month's time. The TGA, they're clarifying and strengthening the regulation of AI, and they've had another consultation paper out in that one. And also the Department of Industry and Resources and guardrails for AI in high-risk settings, which is healthcare. So high-risk settings is healthcare. So, and the WHO ethics and governance for AI. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on. Another thing that came out last week, and Brendan, you might be interested in this one if you didn't know already, is this new ISO standard for AI in healthcare. And it's the ISO 42001. And it's talking about services that utilize the AI system and the people who make the AI. That's the link to it, which we can all send to you later if you wish. What it's talking about is trust and credibility. It's talking about risk management. It's talking about operational excellence. It's talking about competitive advantage. What does it mean to you? Why do we need to tell you this? So the reason why I'm telling you this is that it's looking at not you to get the ISO 42001 if you want to, go ahead, but the recommendation would be to make sure that your provider has the ISO accreditation. Because it's only came out last week, they may not have it yet, but just keep an eye out for it. It's going to be very interesting to see who the first people to come out to say, hey, we've got ISO accreditation for our AI product. So that's the really interesting thing about that. So that's where we are at with all the legislation and all the consultation papers and where healthcare is at, where our federal government's looking at. So you can see there's lots of different parts of the federal government looking at AI in general, but specifically looking at AI in healthcare and how this is going to be a continually moving, changing little beast. But so far, it's all been okay. You don't need new policies. You can just add a line into your current policies. So AI scribes is going okay. We're not talking about TGA AI here that needs to go through TGA and get compliance. We're just talking about the AI scribes. So our key messages are: don't rush to adopt it, making sure that you do your due diligence, that you actually make sure that you know why you want it, what the purpose is, and that it's actually you're actually following through with that purpose and it's actually reaching your goals that you wanted it to do for you. That you need consent. You do need consent for the 3 reasons. We need consent for privacy concerns. We need it in New South Wales for surveillance, and we need it for transparency and ethical. Verbal consent, we're saying, is sufficient. Again, check your notes. We cannot say it any more than that. We've had doctors who say, look, the AI notes are pretty good. I don't even check them anymore. I'm not going to say what we tell them, but you could just imagine it's just not highly recommended at all. So here's some resources here. If you've got your phone, this is our fact sheets, our checklists, anything and everything to do with AI. We've got a big AI landing page now. So you can scan the QR code and you can go into that and it'll take you to all those the fact sheets and everything. If you don't have a phone and you want it later, Julie can get it off to you later. That won't be a problem at all. For those of you who want to know more and do your own little bits of study, you can also, the CSIRO have a short course. It's 3 hours, I think it is, into the introduction of AI, and you get a certificate at the end of it. So very cool. So some of you may want to do that. It actually goes into the history that we talked about right at the very beginning, back in the 1950s, all the way through. So it talks about a whole lot of stuff. The CIRO also have trends in healthcare, so they're a really good resource to have. And there's an AI roadmap into healthcare as well. So there's lots of different resources out there for you to understand and look at where AI is going. But like I said, it could change next week again. So let's just make sure that we don't stop here because it's always ever changing. So questions. Do we have any questions, Evelina?
We have plenty of questions.
Oh, excellent.
Before we will go to questions, I just want to remind people that this is recorded so they can watch it on Sespen channel after YouTube channel, and then there will be these links to the resources. We will also follow up with the email with these links. I would like to remind everybody about evaluation survey link, if you can fill it up, and also you need to notify us if you do not to consent to record of your attendance in form of your name to be disclosed to Avant. We will not disclose any contact numbers of email addresses. So if you do not want it, you need to let us know. And let's start from the questions.
I can see a couple of questions there.
Yes, there are a lot. I may start from the top.
Yep, go for it.
So there were a few questions about this consent, and I know that you covered it, but if you can repeat in here, if the patient has to consent every time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So okay, yeah, I'll clarify that a little bit more. So we're saying that you need to get their consent in the patient registration form, which is just your one-off or annual, however often you do your patient registration forms. Put it in your privacy policy. Then currently, with the current guidelines and legislations, which isn't that are out, we're saying yes, get verbal consent every time. So some of the AI scribes will actually say, has consent been obtained? And you tick the box and then it starts recording. Some of them you'll need to put in your own little note to say AI consent and then tick all AI consent given.
Every time,
So
even
at
if
the moment, we're
patient
saying
agree,
every time. But
even if patient agree in the new patient
yes,
form.
yeah. And the reason why we're saying that is if you've got a patient coming in with a mental health issue, they may not be comfortable for that to be recorded, or they may going, I'm going to tell you something really private and I don't want that to be recorded. So at the moment, like I said, things are changing all the time. At the moment, we are recommending to do it every time.
Sure.
To gain the verbal consent every time when they're in with the doctor.
What if AI is wrong? Who is responsible?
Well, we should have checked, shouldn't we? So again, this is where we go, check, 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 check. Do not rely on AI being correct. Do not rely on it. It's there as a tool to assist you. It is not the tool to take your notes to be the be all and end all. It is only there as an assistance for you to make sure your notes are more detailed, more contemporaneous. So you must check. You must check that if we can't get anything out of it tonight, it's just the practitioner must check the medical record and must check the transcription, edit it, and then approve it as the medical record. So it is up to the practitioner to do that. Sorry to put it all on you, but at the moment, that's the way it is.
What services are available for cyber safety consultations, if you know? I can only say from that side that there is a lot of resources on RACP website and also on Avant website where you can seek information. But would you know about any services for cyber safety consultations?
So if you the team that I'm involved in, the risk advisory service, if you've got a practice policy with Avant, we do assessments for practices, and one of them is cyber safety, cyber security. We also can assist with that and look at where your gaps are and then what you need to do. One of the big things you need to have, and we not in I can't say you need to have, we highly recommend that you do have, is an IT expert in healthcare. And that person, if making sure that your cyber framework, it covers the essential 8 as a bare minimum, and that you can meet those needs. Because if you get when you do have a compromised system and it is a reportable event to the OAIC, which we do see a number of them. Health is the most compromised industry in Australia. So we do need to make sure that it is safe and secure, but having an IT expert in the background will absolutely help you, making sure that you know the patches are being done immediately when they need to be done, that you are going to be notified as soon as there's an intrusion or expected intrusion. But please contact Julie. We're more than happy for practices who've got a practice policy with us. We can do an assessment with you and see where you're at. Talk about your emails. Talk about all the current issues happening with the OAIC and what they're seeing and what the complaints and what the issues are. Does that answer the question, I hope?
Yes,
okay, great.
did, but also jumped me a question. Oh, I have it. So this is the question about softwares. Do we need to install AI into software like Medical Director or best practice? I know that medical softwares are already looking into it, and best practice is already integrated with one of AI tools.
Yeah.
So I think this question is more to your software directly. You can see where Medical Director or best practice lies with it, but because definitely all of the softwares will be looking into it in the future. Sometimes they need a little bit more time to be ready.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Evelina. It's a practice. It's your decision too, whether you want to use an integrated, a semi-integrated, or a freestanding version. It's a personal choice, and it's what's available.
So another question is, what if you embed a default statement in every AI node, like, although I have proofed this AI record, it may still contain errors. Any hope on risk mitigation with that?
That's a legal question. So I would defer to the legal department, but we know that disclaimers don't hold up in court. So they're not worth much. Our lawyers will say they're not worth the paper they're written on, or the however we say that in a digital form.
Another one is interesting one. There was a case in 2023 where a lawyer used ChatGPT for a lawsuit, and it generated fake cases and decisions.
Absolutely.
How do we know that our AI system used in pathology and medical imagining won't eventually produce fabricated or incorrect results?
Yeah, look, I can't give you a definitive answer, but they're going to be TGA approved, and that's one of the risks in using AI in healthcare. There's been more cases than just that one where the lawyer had fake cases that he submitted to court, and yeah, didn't go too well for him. There was another case that came out last week, very similar. It happens. Unfortunately, people are relying on generative AI. So this is where they're designed specifically for healthcare, and they're an enclosed system. They're not open to the open AI. The only information being fed into these algorithms, if you look into the way that they're built, is the information going in is the data that's collected over. So say we look at the Alzheimer's one where I was saying the MRI data is going into the information. So the only information in that is the information that's being fed into it. It's not gathering information from right around the world. It's not gathering information from other sources. It's only got the information there from that's being put into it, into the algorithms. How clean that data is, that's another matter for the people who are building these systems and making sure that they're safe and secure. But I'm sure that's why the government have got so many consultation papers out. The TGA got consultations, and they're doing so much work on it before they finally give us what we need to make sure we do. So at the moment, that's about all I've got to offer you on that question.
Sure. Before I will ask the questions which were also posted into our chat, I wanted also to ask the audience maybe type what are your barriers and fears in
Yeah,
using the AI, so we can discuss a little bit as well. And in the meantime, another question is how to access AI in practice. Can RN or other allied health would be able to use AI? And I can
yeah,
answer this as well that yes, anybody in the practice can use AI. And how do you access it? There are already the programs, but they are paid programs which are integrated, for example, with the best practice. So
yeah,
yeah, talk to your software provider
yeah.
about
Each
it.
practitioner will have to have its own, you'll have to have your own AI
AI.
scribing tool there. Yeah.
Just let me quickly check the chat.
I've got one here. If they're an existing client and we're transitioning over to use AI scribes, you'll need to just have verbal consent. I think we answered that one. You've created a consent form outlining how it's going to be used. Like I said, we don't need a written consent form anymore. Verbal consent is okay. Just put it in your registration form and your privacy policy. So hopefully that will make your transition over much easier. Barriers, tasks forever to get consent. Patients curious and ask details. You know what? It's a very interesting comment, because when we speak to our practitioners who are currently using AI, and we say to them, "Has it? Are the patients asking questions all the time?" And he goes, "No." Most of them actually say, "Oh, it's about time. I thought you already were." So that's generally the comment that our doctors are getting from patients. The patients don't seem to be concerned. None of our doctors that I've spoken to have actually said anyone's declined the fact that they could use it. So patients are just going, yeah, that's just what it is. We thought you already were. So, maybe ask your patients and sort of have a look. But yeah, we don't think our doctors tell us it's not taking any more time at all.
Do we have any more fears or barriers? It looks like, oh, here it is. When we started, I had reception give the patient information to read in the waiting room with shortened the
Yeah.
process.
Mm-hmm.
Does it affect competency of the doctors by patients?
So I think 6 months ago when we first started looking at AI scribes, we were saying to give them information, talk to them about it, train the receptionist and what to say. But times have already moved on so fast that we're finding that that's actually not required anymore. So you can still do it, but why give your staff extra work to do if you actually don't need to do it? So make it easy on yourself, be kind to yourself, be kind to your staff. So, the three things we said to let them know. You can put it on your website as well if you want. Say, hey, some of our doctors use AI to record our notes to making sure they're more accurate. And
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting question, which I don't know the answer. If the consultation is recorded in other languages, will the transcript come in English?
Yes, good question. I think it does. So it uses a translation. Now you'll have to talk to your provider because they don't all do it. And they don't all do all languages. So, and everyone has to be speaking the same language and they're not coming to English. So again, yes, you need to be able to be very fluent in it. You need to be able to understand it, to be able to edit the notes and bring it out. And so you make getting the correct notes in English. Very good question though. I like that one.
Yes, and
Yeah.
still, yes, check and prove it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Can consent on registration form be an opt-out instead of opt-in?
Yep. Yep. You can have that and you certainly do. But don't forget, all they're doing is saying we're using it, and you can have a note in there to say your doctor will be asking you, or you can opt out at any time at any session, because generally, like I said, our doctors have said that no one's opted out as yet. So, but I'm not talking to all the doctors using it either. So some of you doctors who are actually using it, practitioners, you may say that you have got some people that have said, no, I don't want this one recorded. But that's why we're doing the verbal consent at the beginning of each one as well. So
People
yeah.
writing also the cost can be a barrier,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be nice if it would be free for the trial period.
Yeah.
Um,
I think some of them do have a free trial period. Brendan, do you know if any of them have a free trial period or a free
Yeah,
lower entry level version that they can use?
yeah, they do. They are offering those sort of deals to try and help people trial it. Look, Gail, I had another question for you, which is, um, what's going to be the role of the TGA in supporting some of these new developments in terms of AI Scribe, so that GPs have a bit more confidence in the tools that they're choosing?
Yeah, look, I think that's one for the legal team because they've been talking to the TGA and advocating and looking at the lawyers that have been discussing with them what the regulations we need to have and making sure it's actually a really good fail-safe tool for our practitioners to be using. So I'm not really sure, but I guess we'll find out next year when they release the results of the consultation and their recommendations moving forward.
Now, I've got another bit of a tricky question
Go for it.
for you, Gail. All right,
Go
and
for it.
see how we go.
Yes, do it.
Now,
We can do it together.
oh no, we can see what happens. So we've got the GPs here, fantastic. Lovely to have so many GPs and also I note allied health as well. But of course, the issue around medical liability is also in forefront in many people's minds. So, do Avant provide a guide for GPs that will help, if you like, a bit of a best practice guide that will minimise the chances of any untoward legal matters, claims from insurance, if they follow that guide?
Yeah. The QR code, let me go back to that one. There's a checklist on there which we developed. So that QR code there's a checklist. That's one of the bits of information to help you use it in the safest manner possible that we can advise today.
Yeah.
So there is some other information in there, but that's one of the fact sheets in there. It's a good checklist for you to be able to use.
We have other barriers as well. So my other barrier it is that it's not great for complicated consults, miss too many details in the summary, and I spend too much time editing. I think it's learning as well, isn't it? And it will be better.
Yeah, and this is where it comes down fit for purpose, making sure that what you need it to use it for is actually you actually gaining that benefit that you want it to give you. So if you're finding you're spending more time, and I've had doctors say that to me before, but then I've had psychiatrists go, these are the best thing ever. I love it. So, and they have very detailed 1 hour long conversations. So, and they're going, it's the best thing ever that's transformed my practice. So everyone's really different. The way that you consult, the way that you run your practice, it's very different for everybody. That's why it's not a one size fits all. And that's why it's not going to work for everybody. And that's why you got to know what you want it for and making sure you can measure it and make sure it's working for you.
Another question is very good. An opinion of the GP. I'm finding it's brilliant at dictating notes after a patient has left. Do I still need consent as I'm not recording the patient?
Oh, yes, this is a good one. So I'm presuming, and Brendan, you can decipher this a bit for me. So they have the consultation with the patient and then they switch on record. Patient's walked out of the room and then they say their notes and then it goes bing, patient's not in the room. So do you need consent? No, because you're not using it with the patient in the room. You're not using it for the Surveillances Act because only you're being recorded and you don't need your own, well, you got your own consent because you've just given it. So, because you press record. So we're saying that at this point in time, the doctors are using it for that and that's okay because the patient's not there. So you're only recording yourself and you're doing the whole transcript with nobody else around. So one of our doctors actually does that as well. And they go, yep, that's just what we do. So Some doctors use it during the consultation, some use it afterwards.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Look, thanks, Gail. Now, look, I wonder if I could pose a question to everyone, which is, we're thinking about setting up an AI special interest group locally. If any of the people would like to be on that, could they type yes in the chat? We want to get indication in terms of whether people might be interested in setting up a bit of an AI special interest group, be able to share the learnings and the experiences across the GPs, across the allied health, and obviously we'd involve, I think, the really critical area, which is practice managers as well. All right.
How many do you want, Brendan?
As many as you got, mate. So keep on typing yes. We're really keen to have this special interest group locally, because I think it's that local sort of sharing of knowledge, which is what, from a PHM perspective, we'd be quite happy to facilitate. All right.
Yeah, it's just such a rapidly changing environment that it's keeping up with it all is it's a bit of a challenge. But I think it's a great initiative. Well done.
Yeah. And you know, we're also doing a refresh of our SESFN digital health strategy next year. And can I tell you, guess what might be included? Yes, AI. Who would have thought? So
who would have thought that?
Would be, oh, I know, right? So AI is going to be included as part of the new SESFN digital health strategy that we'll start working on after the Christmas break, right? But that'll certainly be included.
Yeah, right? That's great. That's really good. Any more questions before we finish?
I've got one other question for you, if I may.
Go for it.
Sorry, is that all right?
Go for it.
Now,
Yeah,
what's the difference between the allied health software and some of the software for GPs? Do you have any experience with the allied health?
No, I haven't. Do you know what the difference is?
I know that there are some differences, but I think some of these tools for allied health are still being developed. The allied health is such a diverse group of professionals, it was a question that came up in our clinical council last night. So I guess it's watch the space.
Are they the same service providers that are currently doing the practitioner?
You know what? Can I say to you, I almost think it's worth, can I say to you, Evelina, it's almost worth another webinar at some point, right?
Yes, that's what I wanted to say. That's what I wanted to say in my thank you and goodbyes. I wanted to say that it's not the last meeting on AI, as Gail Wang said. This information are current as per 12th of November, but we definitely will bring you up to date. And as you can see, that's definitely Brendan's passion. So we will have more and more webinars coming. So just follow our Sydney Health Weekly to hear about our future events and webinars. I have one more question, or maybe not the last, but I do have question. Do you have an opinion on using some of open LLM services like Cloudy for generating care plans, obviously as a starting point?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yes, I quickly posted for you in the chat as well.
And there's a lot of, they're saying psychologists are using Heidi there, Brendan. And so, yeah. Do you have an opinion on using some of the open LLM models like Claude? I don't know what Claude is for generating care plans. Okay, so the same principles will apply no matter what you're using. Is it specific to healthcare? Is it fit for purpose? Look at do your due diligence. What about the data? Where's the data being stored? Go through that whole fact and that checklist that we've got on our website. It doesn't matter what software you're using, you still need to do the same due diligence. So anything that's connected to the World Wide Web and the internet, and it's using open AI to gather the information, highly recommend not to use. We've seen some of that go really wrong. So would really recommend making sure you do your due diligence regardless of what software platform it will be that you're going to use.
Sure. I think that's it for tonight. I think it was a success. We all learned a lot, and there is a lot to learn in future. Thank you very much, Gail.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good night.
See ya.